So we're going to talk about business-to-business software products, so SaaS products for those that know them well. Before we start, though, a little bit about ARC Regulatory. So ARC is working in the precision medicine sector and providing consultancy support to pharmaceutical companies, some of the largest ones in the world, diagnostics companies, and small biotechs as well. And there's a number of different areas that we support. So it can be with advice on the regulations themselves, particularly around in vitro diagnostics and the much-loved IVDR regulations. But we also support clinical monitoring of the trials associated with those in vitro diagnostics, and we're also able to provide training as well. So that gives us a focus along those areas, particularly in first-in-man trials, where you have a new drug coming through that might be using a diagnostic test which is relatively untried within a laboratory, and we want to make sure that that test does what it's supposed to do and supports the ongoing regulatory pathway of the drug that's being tested. But what we've done in ARC, since we were established in 2010 by Seamus and Michelle Kearney, is also to move forward and develop a software package called ARC 360, which enables particularly labs and pharmaceutical companies to gain some of the insights that our team can provide in a software product to support their own regulatory teams. And that's really what we're going to base this on today. One thing to say, and I'll emphasize it because we're here, but ARC is a Northern Irish company. So it was developed by Northern Irish people in Northern Ireland, and that's where we're staying, and that's where our head office is based. In order to be able to support a global network of clinical trials, we do have human resources across the world, from Australia in the east to the US in the west, and many places in between. But the bulk of our individuals are based at Catalyst in Concourse 1, and that's expanding very quickly. So you can see more information on our website, but we have a rapidly growing team in Belfast. Quickly, a glance, we've worked on 52 different biomarker programs, working with at least 8 of the top pharma companies globally, and that may have increased. Many of those we're working with on multiple projects over a period of time, so they're coming back to us to work with us again. We've completed more than 140 projects with 40 plus clients across the globe and more than 500 clinical monitoring visits to support those clinical trials with in vitro diagnostics. And as I mentioned, we have a growing team, rapid growing team, with some superb individuals that have enormous knowledge around the regulations and how to implement those within a clinical trial setting. So that team is already up to 25 and will keep growing over the next few months. So that's a little bit about ARC. Now, a little bit about this area. So this is a risky slide, I think. So what I wanted to try and show was that there are a number of companies in Northern Ireland working in tech and potentially in SaaS products as well. I've probably offended numerous people in the room by not including their logo on this slide, but I just wanted to highlight a few. So is anyone here from any of those companies, just out of interest? Oh, yes. Oh, there we are. I've got one, definitely. Is your logo up there? Yes. Great. Fantastic. So I picked out some of the ones within healthcare, so Cerdan, Sonray, Be Secure, Exploristics, and then tried to show that software products are also in other areas as well. So we have Stat Sports for sports tech, and Kainos as well, working with UK DVLA. So there's all sorts of companies that are developing software products that they can provide to the public or to businesses to support various activities in all sorts of different fields. So it's a growing area for Northern Ireland. For ARC in particular, we're concentrating on the in vitro diagnostics market, and we don't need to go through the numbers in particular, but just to show that there's a massive, more than $100 billion market for in vitro diagnostics globally, which is growing rapidly as we go forward in time and broadly split between the major markets of North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. So you have a big global network of diagnostic products being developed. So a little bit about ARC 360, which is our regulatory navigator. This is designed to support 2 different groups of people. So you have the central labs themselves who are running the diagnostic test and all the legislation and rules that they need to follow to make sure that they do that correctly and in line with the authorities that they're working with. And then you also have the sample collection sites. So one of the key things that I've learned in my brief time with ARC is it doesn't really matter where your laboratory is, it's where your samples are coming from. So if you're collecting samples in Europe, even if you're analyzing them in a US lab, that US lab still needs to follow European regulations and therefore IVDR, which in a lot of cases, the US labs don't seem to understand that requirement is there. But those are the two groups of people that we're trying to support. There's a number of different items within that toolkit. So we have a range of learning modules on all sorts of different regulations and ISO requirements, both for Europe, but also for beyond. And we also have a system that is designed to support different learning styles. So everyone learns in different ways. The idea of this is that it can sit with a group, with a team, and they can refer to it in a way that suits them best. So there's more than 40 different countries where information is provided already within the system. So depending on where your area of interest is in the world, you can go into that area, you can read about the regulations, and you can get advice on what processes you'll have to follow within that country to make sure that you're fully compliant and developing the best drugs that we can develop. Now, I can talk about it a bit, but I thought it would be better if you heard a little bit from our CEO and founder, Seamus. So if the technology works, hopefully we'll just play a really short video.
Implementing companion or in vitro diagnostics in global precision medicine studies can be complex and time-intensive. Changing regulations in key markets like the European Union make this ever more challenging. Fortunately, the ARC 360 Regulatory Navigator consolidates and simplifies this process. You can now easily identify the requirements for clinical studies of in vitro or companion diagnostics in your countries of interest. The Regulatory Navigator is divided into two main sections. In the first, you can view the requirements for central lab locations in several countries. This section shows relevant information needed for setting up a central testing site for your clinical study. Screening questions for each country help narrow the focus for your specific device and study, and they highlight key regulatory pathways. This includes applicable legislation, labeling requirements, regulatory and ethical approvals, investigator and sponsor responsibilities, and mandatory study records. The other tab, Sample Collection Sites, shows useful information for different countries and their requirement at the sites where samples are obtained during the trial. You can view regulatory intelligence on both the competent authority and ethics committee requirements for study approval, as well as the application or submission process for each. A dedicated safety or adverse event reporting section details what type of event should be reported, when it should be reported, how it should be reported, and who it should be reported to. Is there value in this tool for your study team? Choose the subscription that best suits your business and pocket. Subscribe to ARC 360 today.
Perfect. So hopefully you get a glimpse there that there's a potentially terrifying situation where a company or a new business is looking at what are the regulatory requirements for this trial within this country, within multiple countries, and this tool will support you in guiding through what you need to meet to tick off the regulatory requirements within those target markets. If anyone would like a proper demonstration of the system, please just visit the ARC stand, which is over in the back there in the corner, by the only bit of natural daylight in the conference room. And if anyone would like to hear Seamus's dulcet tones again, you can do that tomorrow afternoon in the precision medicine session in the panel discussion there. Okay, so the first thing around the product is looking at the value proposition. So does this add anything that isn't already available? And the key for ARC 360 is really looking at how we can make efficiencies for people working within their regulatory processes. So can you save time and money to get products through by knowing what it is that you're supposed to do and then making sure that you obey those regulations? So that's one of the key elements of this system. There's obviously an online training element for that as well. So whether a regulatory team has new staff members joining that need to get up to speed. And one of the exciting things going forward is that we're looking to build in some AI capabilities within the system. So at the moment, a lot of the system is manually inputted by our expert team. But if you can imagine a status where you can have updates being pulled in automatically from various systems around the world so that the system automatically updates and you keep getting fresh information. Because unfortunately, regulators have a common habit of changing things when they feel like it and just tweaking things bit by bit. So that gives us something that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. This slide's a bit busy, but just to talk about some of the go-to-market strategies. So in reality, it's not a huge amount different from a physical product. So our go-to-market strategy for ARC 360 is built around face-to-face contact at conferences, but also a lot of online activities. So a lot of e-marketing and website activities just to reach people globally. And how we built it and how we've learned from it. So to begin with, we start with a team, a very small team. You develop an initial product. You start getting customer insights on that product. which helps you then define how you should develop the product going forward. So what was missing, what could be improved, what bits they didn't like. You can develop your product, and then you can build a future product, and then it goes around in circles again. So as your product gets bigger, you need more people to do the software engineering to take it forward, and then your team gets bigger and it goes round again. You keep going round as more and more customers come on board. And this is the same really for any software product going forward. Thinking about how you fund products such as ARC360, so there's a number of different options, and they each have some pros and cons. So you can get government funding. I should have put Invest NI first, sorry. You can have government funding from the likes of Invest Northern Ireland, from Innovate, from Intertrade Ireland. So you can access funding, or at least part funding for development through those sort of organisations. You can develop it yourself and pay for it yourself internally. So use your own money from within the company to drive it forward. Or you can go outside the company and seek external investment from a variety of VC or angel investors. But the things you have to consider are around which suits you best as a business. So obviously it's faster if you pay it yourself. You're not having to apply for grants to government. You're not having to go out and find investors. You're not having to give away a certain percentage of your company to get investor support potentially. But at the same time, it depends on your internal resources and whether you're in a position to be able to fund it so that you don't slow down the development of your product and lose time that way and risk the potential of competitors coming through or the product becoming outdated versus the best in class. So those are the balances that have to be made as a decision process within any product development. So just to summarize, there was a huge number of things on here, and I've just highlighted a few of them. So first thing, to look at the product development. So how are you going to get it to market? What are you going to do if something goes wrong, if something delays it? So what are your contingency plans, and how are you going to put those into place? How are you going to fund it? So do you pay for it internally and take all the risk on yourself, or do you seek outside money, bearing in mind that it may take you longer to get that money in, but you might be able to bring a greater quantum of money to support the overall product development? How are you going to deliver it? So the timelines and how that fits in. So if you take ARC360 as an example, this is a perfect time for a product like this to be available, with the changes in the European regulations going on that no one in truth really understands, with changes coming in the US as well very soon, which also will then need a whole new round of training for people. So it's making sure that your product arrives at the right time for what's going on in the wider marketplace. A roadmap for the future, so the product never stays the same. It's always going to generate and regenerate again, a bit like Doctor Who, if there's any Doctor Who fans in. So there's always going to be a version 2, a version 3, a version 4, because you have to keep making improvements. It can't stay the same, and you see that with a lot of software products. And the other key part is that somebody has to take ownership. So ideally, an individual has to take ownership of the product. Otherwise, it can drift and get lost in a wider organization. So internally, you need a product champion that looks after a product and drives it forward. Even though they'll need the support of many others within the organization, there's got to be one that you say, yes, that's the person that runs that product. Another key element is obviously the insights you get from customers. So there's absolutely no point developing a product that you think is a great idea, but the customer thinks is completely rubbish and pointless. So you have to keep listening to the customer, getting their feedback on the concept itself before you develop it, but also on the various features and benefits, and highlighting which of those is most important and which one should be developed further. So you keep that constant feedback loop going from your customers. Also, you potentially have multiple stakeholders, and this is certainly the case for ARC360, and I'm sure is the case for a lot of other software products as well. So you've got the person that actually uses the product, but they're not often the decision maker. So there'll be a procurement person that has to pay for it, so they'll want to be involved. You may well have product champions within an organization, so the head of the department who decides what can be done. So there's multiple people that need to be mapped out within a single organization to work out who it is you're trying to get to make sure that the benefits of your product and the features are well understood. You need to track the journey as well, so actually getting them to start using the product is the first step, but then you've got to make sure that they continue to enjoy using it, they continue to get benefit, and they continue to get taken forward. So looking after them once they're onboarded to make sure they continue to get supported. And obviously another key area that you can have insights from is your own company team. So getting feedback from them, because they're hearing things from their cold face direct from customers, and feeding that back in to say, this group didn't like this, or this group really liked this, and just looking at ways of taking that forward. And then you need to find a way of measuring success. So obviously, the most obvious one is sales and revenue. which as a commercial person is always going to fit well. But there are other ways as well. So you can look at which clients you brought on board, the caliber of clients, the number of clients, whether they've stayed and continued, whether they've renewed, how many are actively using the system. So how many have signed up long term, how many come back to you the following year. And then you can look at things like recurring revenue growth. So are you keeping those customers year on year? And looking at pipeline activities as well. So do you have a host of people lined up to use your product in the future? So all of those things can be ways of tracking beyond just measuring how many of these, how much of this software have you actually managed to sell. So with that, I'll say thank you. Just to direct you towards the ARC stand at the back of the room, if you'd like to see a demo. There are rumours that there will be sweets and chocolate on that stand tomorrow as well. Not that we're bribing you, but if you'd like to come and see a demonstration or else find some more information about ARC's consultancy services as well.